Hello everybody, it's Fu here, and today I wanted to do a video all about the newly announced mythical Pokemon Zarude. I don't usually like legendaries and mythicals, I'm more about the overlooked and underrated Pokemon, but Zarude has really caught my attention. I love the design, I think it looks amazing, and already people are disrespecting Zarude, saying he's going to be really bad when we really don't know that yet. So I wanted to make this video to dispel some myths and say that Zarude has a ton of potential. I'll be going over some information that's already out there, and there's some information about stats which is really interesting, and then I'll also go into some speculation and say 3 things that I think Zarude needs for it in order for it to be good in battle. But first, what do we already know? We know its typing, which is dark grass, and it is bad defensively. We can all agree that it's got tons of weaknesses, and bug type will be a big issue. Yes, U-turn is going to be a problem, but it's not the death of a Pokemon. For example, Weavile is a very frail Pokemon with tons of weaknesses, including a weakness to Stealth Rock and a 4 times weakness to Fighting, but it's still a good Pokemon because it's good offensive typing and it's an offensive Pokemon. I think this could be the case here. If this is an offensive Pokemon, Dark Grass is very good offensively. We also know its ability, which is Leaf Guard, and unfortunately this compounds the issue because Leaf Guard is objectively bad. Even if it was a defensive Pokemon with a defensive typing, Leaf Guard is too situational for it to be considered a good ability. The sun has to be up and the opponent has to be trying to status you. It's really not enough of a payoff. This would be so much better if it was something different, but unfortunately it looks like we're going to have to suck it up and accept Leaf Guard for now. We also know some of the moves it can use. We've seen Power Whip, Taunt, and on the website there's a picture of it using Vine Whip, which is kind of irrelevant. Power Whip is great, it's a very powerful physical attack for a grass type, so that would be really nice, and Taunt is very good. If it's fast, that could be fantastic. And then the last piece of information we already have is its HP stat. We have some information around that, and I think that that's really exciting. So on the website we can see that at level 60 Zarude has 212 HP. Now 212 HP at level 60 could mean a number of different things for Zarude's base HP stat. You have to consider the variables including effort values and individual values, or EVs and IVs. I've looked at other pre-release screenshots on the Pokemon Sword and Shield website, things like when Eldegoss or Alchemy were released, to see how many EVs and IVs they had. It looks like most Pokemon don't have any EVs and usually a random amount of IVs, normally around 20. So what does this mean for Zarude? Well, it means its base HP stat is looking like it's probably around 105. It could be higher, it could be slightly lower, but it's probably going to be around 105. And that's actually a really good HP stat, but that might not be a good thing for Zarude specifically, which I'll go into in a second. So now I'm going to talk about 3 things that I think Zarude needs to be a good Pokemon. The first thing and the most important thing I want to talk about is the stats. So, as with most mythicals, I think that it's likely that Zarude will have a base stat total of 600, which is a really great base stat total, but it has to be distributed appropriately along its 6 stats. A lot of mythicals have base 100 across the board, things like Mew, Celebi, and Victini, and that would not be good for Zarude because that would give it too much bulk for a typing that is not defensive. So even if it's got 100 across the board, it will take hits badly. What we want to see is lower defenses and then higher offensive stats. So I've put together a speculated stat spread, which I think would be fantastic for Zarude. And that's taking into account the HP stat of 105, which I think is locked in and we can assume that. I took inspiration from Darmanitan. Both its Galarian and normal forms have bad defensive typing. Fire or Ice are really bad defensive typings, but they're good offensive typings. And Darmanitan, though it does have a high HP stat, it still has a very good offensive stats with a lower base stat total than 600. So we're looking at massive attack stat, a usable speed stat, and the rest of its stats, apart from its HP, being pretty bad. And for a mythical, that's what I've gone for here. So I've given Zarude 105 HP, that's kind of locked in. I've given it 75 defenses, which are kind of low for a mythical, but not the lowest that we've ever seen before. For example, Hooper's got only base 60 defense. So 75 is definitely not unprecedented. The 65 special attack stat is very low for a mythical, so that might be pushing it a bit. But having such low defenses and special attack allow us to have an insanely high base 164 attack stat, which would be amazing. That would immediately make Zarude a really relevant Pokemon because it hits so hard with great dual stab typing. And then I also gave it a speed stat of 116. Now, some people might want to see a faster speed stat, and that is definitely possible because we've seen it zooming around in the trailer, and it's got extendable vines from its wrist and its feet and its back that can help it swing through trees really fast. So we could see a faster speed stat. I just think that having this speed stat, it still makes it really fast for Pokemon Sword and Shield, but not quite as fast as Zero Aura because that's a relatively new mythical we haven't seen too much, and I don't want to overlap their roles too much. I want this guy to be really unique so people want to use it more. So that's basically my wish list for Zarude's stats. I just want a massive attack stat because a physical attacker here with that typing and with Power Whip, it all would be amazing for Zarude. How likely is it? I think it's relatively likely. The 105 base HP stat tells us that we're not just going to get a 100 across the board Pokemon, which is nice to see. So we just have to hope for higher offenses and lower defenses. But then the second thing I wanted to talk about, which is the next most important consideration, is the move pool that this thing will get. And the moves that I really want to see it get. We've already seen Power Whip, which is a great grass attack. We don't really need to see too much else. Maybe Leaf Blade or Seed Bomb as a more reliable attack would be good to see. But in terms of dark attacks, it would be incredible to see Knockoff. I think that that's very likely. A lot of things with vines or with tentacles get Knockoff, things like Tentacruel. So I think Knockoff would be really good. It's powerful and it removes items. That would be amazing. Sucker Punch would also be great because it allows it to have priority, and with the suggested speed stat, it's a very fast Pokemon, but having the option for priority would be very, very helpful to be able to take on anything that is slightly faster than Zarude. Other coverage moves that I think are important are some poison coverage. I'd really like to see Gunk Shot for fairy types. That would hit them so hard. And there is precedent for grassy monkeys to have this because Simisage learns this move, and also Infernape is able to learn this move. So 2 monkey Pokemon that can learn Gunk Shot. I think that Zarude might be able to learn that. And then what would also be amazing would be some fighting type coverage to help with other dark types and steel types, for example. So close combat, high jump kick, or even cross chop would be really nice to see. And I say cross chop, which is a bit of a left field suggestion, but that's because I'd love to see this Pokemon get Hone Claws as a setup move. Hone Claws is really cool. You don't see it too much, but it boosts your attack by 1 stage and your accuracy by 1 stage. And I think with the suggested moves that I've got here, especially seeing as though we already know it gets Power Whip, it would get a lot of powerful but inaccurate moves. And after 1 Hone Claws, you boost their power even further and ensure that they always hit. So I'd love to see a Hone Claws Zarude set being possible. That would be really fun to see. If not, Swords Dance would be great as well, especially if it does get Sucker Punch. Swords Dance would be amazing for a sweeping Zarude, so I'd like to see that. In terms of utility moves, U-Turn would be great for momentum and also just as some nice coverage for grass types. And then there's also Parting Shot here, it being a dark type move and Zarude being a dark type. I could see that working really well as well. And then it could even get some sleep-inducing moves. Things like maybe Sleep Powder because it's a grass type, but probably not. It doesn't look very powdery to me. Or potentially Grass Whistle, or maybe even Hypnosis. With those crazy psychedelic eyes, I could see Hypnosis being possible, and those moves will pair really nicely with Hone Claws too. I have seen speculation about Spore, but I think that's incredibly unlikely because in Japanese, that attack is actually called Mushroom Spore specifically, and that's why only Mushroom Pokemon learn it, so I think Zarude is very unlikely to learn Spore, so don't get your hopes up for that. But I think with these suggested moves and my speculated stat spread, this would make for an incredible Pokemon that a lot of people would want to use. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the ability, the elephant in the room. Now, I would love to see Zarude get a hidden ability, and that could definitely make it more viable immediately if it's anything other than Leaf Guard, basically, because Leaf Guard is just so not useful. However, this is very, very unlikely. All mythicals so far only have 1 ability, and that even includes mythicals that have multiple forms. All the Deoxys forms only have pressure. Keldeo has 2 different forms and they have the same ability. Meloetta doesn't change abilities when it changes forms. So I think it's very unlikely that Zarude itself will have a hidden ability. If it could, it would be amazing to see something like Tough Claws to boost its contact move power, or even adaptability. It looks really adaptable, and that would be amazing for its grass and dark type moves to get a damage bonus. Or maybe even speed boost as it's running around and swinging through the trees. Something like that would change this Pokemon immediately, and no one would have a bad word to say about it. But unfortunately, Leaf Guard is definitely meaning that a lot of people are thinking this Pokemon is going to be very bad. And that may not be the case, because I think that there is so much potential here. So those are my thoughts on Zarude. I think it has the potential to be a fantastic Pokemon. I love the design. Regardless of how it turns out, I'm probably going to use it, because even if it's a bad Pokemon, I like bad Pokemon. I'd like to try to make bad Pokemon work. Let me know your thoughts on Zarude in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like. It really helps out my channel and lets me know what you want to see more of, and subscribe for more content. All that's left to be said is I've been Fu, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.